Hey everybody, today I am going to be doing another Q&A and you guys wrote in some questions and I'm going to answer them. But before we get to that, I'm going to go ahead and plug my website. It is deepfocuslens.com. I am an artist and I do commissioned artwork and I sell prints. And if you're interested in that, you can just go to deepfocuslens.com/shop. If you have questions about a print or a possible commission, you can always email me. The email is in the description box below. And let's get on to the Q&A. Did psychedelics ever lose their magic for you? Because they're starting to with me, even with long breaks in between. This is an excellent question, one that you don't hear a lot. I think a lot of people actually glamorize psychedelics a little bit too much. And so I'm really glad that you had this question. As an experience itself, no, it has never lost its magic for me, but it's very hard to, when you go on a really, really intense dose of something. Like DMT, I can't imagine anybody doing DMT and getting bored in the midst of it. However, the experience of it and your choice to do it at a certain point in your life, I think is absolutely affects the experience, and it may not necessarily be the right time. I am a huge believer in, taking your time to really experience life and figure out how these things have affected your life, what they've taught you before you just jump in to another experience. There have absolutely been times in my life where I've done something and, in the midst of it, I sort of had this feeling like, this wasn't the right time. This wasn't the right way to go about it. Maybe it had to do with my mood. It had to do with things that were going on in my life at the time. It just, something about it, it felt like it was more forced rather than organic. And I think these experiences should be absolutely organic. So yeah. If you don't feel it, if you feel jaded from the experience, don't do it. Maybe one day you will return and the experience will feel fresh for you. That certainly happened to me as well, and maybe not. I know some people who have done it maybe once and they felt like they learned all they needed to and they never did it again. And that's perfectly, I salute that. What are your thoughts on Chris Stuckman? Do you like his style? I've gotten this question a lot recently. I don't know why. I respect him. I do respect him. His work is not necessarily my style. And that's okay. I am, very different. He is more more neatly packaged. He's more commercial. He gets, more to the point, more kind of your standard review, which is really, it's understandable why he has a lot of success. And, it's real passion. It's real passion for film, I think, that comes through. And there is a sort of positivity to him. I don't know him personally. I've never messaged him or anything like that, but, he seems like a nice guy from what I've seen. But yeah, it's definitely not my style and definitely not something that I gravitate towards naturally, but I can respect it. Just like I'm my own thing. It's not naturally the thing that people gravitate towards. I like being more the antithesis of that type of reviewer or that reviewing style because, it helps set you apart a little bit. But no, mutual admiration for the people that do these sorts of things for sure. How and when did you get into watching UFC? It's not really that interesting of a story. I dated a cage fighter in college, and I learned quite a few moves myself, and I got into it around that point and just kind of stuck with it. As somebody passionate about dancing, what is your opinion on Bob Fosse? Have you seen any of his films? Yeah, of course. I've seen all his films. I've seen, his original films where he was more a performer as well as kind of doing the choreography and then getting more into the actual directing. I think he's one of the great choreographers. I think, he kind of goes beyond choreography. He created new shapes that redefined what dance could be. And, I love his films because they're not, he's not like a typical musical director. He's much more kind of, as I say, eccentric, very, even kind of psychedelic and trippy. There's a real artfulness to the way that he makes his films that I just think was never recaptured, unfortunately. And I think he is maybe one of the best people to be able to film a dance sequence. I mean, obviously he just understands the body in a way that nobody else did. And he captures it in a way that is absolutely perfect, that emphasizes every moment, every crescendo of music, every body line absolutely perfectly. It might be a tired question, but what's your race/ethnicity? If I had to guess, it'd be white mixed with Native American and maybe a little bit of Hispanic. You're pretty much there. You don't have to worry about that question. I'm not easily offended, and I think it's ridiculous that anyone would be offended by that. Yes, I'm half white, and I'm half Mexican, half Hispanic. Which movies/actors inspired you to make a YouTube channel? No actors did really. It was more movie critics. I mean, if I wanted to go way back, it would be Roger Ebert and Siskel, Siskel and Ebert, that show, just because they commercialized the idea of what movie reviewing could be for all of us on YouTube. But as far as actually taking it to the next step and doing it online on YouTube, it was actually Channel Awesome. It feels weird saying this now, but it was the original nostalgia critic and Doug Walker. There was just something about, the idea of somebody who could just take a camera, film himself talking about something, doing everything himself, that I thought I could do that. And all the other reviewers on that site, I had the ones that I really gravitated towards, and some of them have done very well. Maybe one or two have done pretty well where I actually still like their content. The rest of them have just spiraled in really fascinating and, very sad sorts of ways. And I think that it's kind of like a Shakespearean tragedy, a lot of those people. And so I look at that, and it kind of shows you what not to do, what to be cautious about when you're creating your own content and when it gets bigger. All that I think is really important to pay attention to. So not only were they inspiring me at the time, but once I moved on from them, naturally, I saw kind of the aftermath of it. And, it is a little scary. So cautionary tale, I guess I would say. Oh, great question. Okay. Favorite figure skaters, past and current. I used to watch the bigger events, but kind of fell off of it. I really, really love Samuel Contesti. After retiring, Javier Fernandez sort of took his place in my book. Carolina Costner and Yuna Kim were amazing. Okay, sorry, for anyone who doesn't know figure skating, this is going to be one of those questions where you're just, that just goes over your head. You have some really good choices here. Carolina Costner, I saw her perform live a few years ago, and she was absolutely brilliant. And Yuna Kim is maybe one of the greatest female figure skaters of all time, and one of my personal favorites. My favorites right now would be Nathan Chin, of course, Yuzuru Hanyu, Jason Brown, Shoma Uno. I'm really starting to get interested in Yuma Kagiyama, as I think a lot of people were after his showing at the World Championships. I'm less a fan of a lot of the ladies currently, but that's no surprise. I do love Aliana Kosternaya. Unfortunately, she had a bad season, but just fundamentally her talent, I think, is unparalleled. I'm drawn to skaters like Ansu Lim and Satoko Miyahara. I really love the Japanese style in particular, especially their soft knees and the jumps. So just off the top of my head, those would be some of my current choices. And then of the past, I have to go with, of course, like Michelle Kwan. Alexia Gooden was maybe my favorite skater of all time. Sasha Cohen, John Curry from way in the past. The list will just go on and on and on. Your favorite documentaries of all time? I'm really not a big documentary person, and I'm sure that's evident based on the fact that I very rarely do anything on documentaries. I don't think I ever have, actually. But there is one documentary that I absolutely love. It was made in the 90s, and it was by Errol Morris, and it is called Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control. I think that might be the greatest documentary I have ever seen, and one of the more ambitious ones. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. Given how long you've been doing reviews, are there any you not only have changed your viewpoint on, but would like to re-review? Yeah, I'd probably redo most of them given the chance, especially from years past. Sure, I really don't like to go back and look at reviews because it's naturally embarrassing, but if I've needed to for a refresher, if I'm reviewing a sequel to something or whatever, I find myself looking back at the ones I did, in my mid-20s and early 20s and before, and they're just really, really embarrassing. Even if it's movies that I loved back then and still love, the way I expressed why I loved them back then just felt very novice. But yeah, I'm sure there are lots of movies that I review that I didn't like and that I like now. But I think even more so, I think they're just reviews that I wish I could redo just to, do something justice. How hyped are you for the last Tarantino film? I like Tarantino. He's not my favorite, so I don't get really hyped. I don't really get that hyped for movies a lot nowadays. Haven't for quite a few years. On occasion, there will be something I really, really am excited to see. But with Tarantino, it's more like I'm always intrigued. Obviously, when a movie of his comes out, I'll see it. I hope you don't get me wrong here, but I'd like to know what it's like to do a channel like this as a woman. To be honest, most of the time I see videos about movies that are done by men. But I think it's cool to see a woman on this channel. Don't want to get too political, ideological. And I wouldn't call myself a feminist either. Just curious. No, that's a really good question, and I rarely get asked it, but it's something I do contemplate all the time because it's an interesting thing to contemplate. And yeah, it's very apparent. It's constantly brought up to you, whether you're a man or a woman on a channel, if it's something that's rare. So you're right. I do see female critics for sure, but they are more rare than male critics, and especially for somebody like me, I don't see that many women reviewing movies like Come and See. I don't see that many women reviewing movies like Irreversible. So I kind of like that I'm able to go there and not really care. I am not political at all, at least in the modern kind of new wave feminist sense. I've spoken over and over again about how the virtue signaling, the victimization, and the kind of the toxic sexuality that I think pervades modern feminism is quite toxic. And it is kind of funny because, look, I am very aware that if I weren't a woman, I probably would not have that many followers at all. If you go to my analytics, it is very clear that about 95% of my audience is male. And 5%, maybe even less a lot of the time, is female. Guys love to throw that in my face on Twitter as if they think it's going to rile me up, but I think you forget who you're talking to here. They like to say things like, no one would watch you if you were a man. And it's like, you know, I think a lot of women, if a guy said that, they would get really offended. And for me, I'm like, no, you're probably right. I think a lot of women just kind of, again, it's the victimization thing. They want the world to be against them. So they'll say, how dare you say that? And it's like, well, you know, there might actually be truth to it. There are many double standards with women, and there are also double standards with men. And I think a lot of women fail to recognize that. So yes, I'm absolutely aware of what I look like, and I'm aware of how that contributes to any success that I may have on this channel. And I'm very grateful for it. Regardless of who watches and who doesn't, I just try to I stick to my gut, and I do what I feel feels the most natural, the most genuine, because that's kind of the person that I am. Sometimes you're not taken as seriously. Sometimes there's always going to be those guys on there that are threatened by intelligence. And, you know, again, it's just insecurity. You look at it, you move on. Men or women, I hope what I say connects with somebody, at least a few people. So yeah, those are some answers to your questions. You guys always have great questions, and I always appreciate hearing them and doing these Q&As. We'll do another one eventually. And that is the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Over here you will see my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys. As always, it means the world, your support. And if you are interested in becoming a patron, the link to support that is below, as well as my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.